Hi everybody. In today's video, we're going to be learning how to rank all the NBA players by their statistical point value using Python. So this is going to be the first video in a two-part series where in this portion of the video, we're going to be covering how to fetch all the required data. And in the second part of the video, we're going to be actually getting into how we're going to be using that data to maybe create a graph of all the NBA players' performances and their worth so far in the 2020 to 2021 season. So just as a quick snippet for part two, I'll give you guys an idea of how we actually rank the NBA players. And what we do is we use the formula used in fantasy basketball to give a player a certain worth. So what I mean by that is in fantasy basketball, we use certain statistical values to give a eventual point value to a player. So for example, the worth of a player can be determined by the points plus 1.2 times the rebounds they make plus 1.5 times the number of assists they make, etc., etc., etc. So if I were to go here really quickly and search up fantasy basketball formula, and we go to fantasydata.com, you can see that what they do is they set the 3 points made to 3 points, so the 2 points made to 2 points, the free throws made equal to 1 point, the rebounds they make equal to 1.2 points, assist is 1.5, block shots is 2, steals is 2, and turnovers is a negative point. And these first couple categories are just equal to the total points the player has made. So, because we're looking at the total performance or of a player throughout the season so far, we're going to be using total points. So instead of just sticking to, say, the number of rebounds is equal to 1.2 points, say that in the season so far, a player has made 300 rebounds. So the points that are assigned to them based on that is going to be 1.2 times 300 plus whatever other stats they have. So since we're going to be scraping data, we're going to need a couple of things. And more specifically, we're scraping data from the internet. So we're going to need two things. And the first one is going to be requests, which is a module that allows us to request data from the internet and actually go ahead and download it. And another module is BS4 or Beautiful Soup. And what that allows us to do is it basically allows us to go through that downloaded data a little bit easier and work through it. So, um, the place I'm going to be getting my data is a website called Basketball Reference. It's a great website because all the data comes out on one long column, and that's really helpful. And what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly take note of this URL right here because this is kind of what will tell our program where to go. So I'll start off by making something called a main block. So this is where our function will jump to as soon as the program begins. And let's create a variable called URL just to store our URL so far. And our URL is going to be in strings because it is a string. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a request to download this page. So we're going to set a variable called page equal to requests, requests dot get URL. So what this does is it goes ahead and fetches the URL. So if I print the page, let's just see what happens. So as you can see here, it gives me a response 200, which isn't the content of the page. Rather, it's the response we got back from the website saying that all is good. And 200 stands is like a code on the internet or the websites in general for that everything's good and you're good to go. So now with the page, if we want to take a look at the whole content of the page, instead of just printing page, we can do something like page.content, save it, and run it. And as you can see here, it gives us this big mumbo jumbo with like a bunch of different things here. And essentially, this is the content of the page. And by that, I mean, like, when you look at this, you don't see what you're seeing on the website here. What you're seeing is the structure of the page, which is the HTML behind it. And the way I pulled up this window is by pressing Control-Shift-I. You can also do the same thing by right-clicking and pressing Inspect, and that brings up this window. And it's just showing us the structure of the whole page. So at the top, you can see a couple of similarities. You can see the doc type HTML, HTML data version, etc., etc. And this is just an exact copy of this. And that's what our requests allow us to do. It basically allows us to make a copy of this in our local program. And then what Beautiful Soup does is it just makes our lives easier by just organizing the way we can go through all these different pieces of data by just using a couple of simple commands. So I'm just going to get rid of this print page content line. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually use Beautiful Soup. And the way we use Beautiful Soup is we create a object, and in this case, a Beautiful Soup object of the page that we just downloaded. So I'm going to set a variable soup for Soupify equal to whatever the Beautiful Soup function returns when we give it the page.content and we tell it to parse it as HTML. So we do HTML.parser. And now we can actually go through this page with Beautiful Soup, and it makes our lives a lot easier. So if I go ahead and run this and everything runs successfully, we won't get any output because we're not printing anything. But it went ahead, it made the request, and it soupified the page content. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how the actual page is structured. And because we're grabbing all the statistics of the page, you'll notice that all the stats are in this one big table. And this table is really all we care about. And as you can see here, we want to target this table, but before targeting the values in the table, we got to know what each row, or sorry, each column in the table stands for. So the first goal is to get all the column names of our of the website that we're scraping right now. So let's create a function, and we'll call it def get column names for get column names. And what we're going to do is kind of exploit how soup works. And the way soup works is that it attacks all these different tags. So as you can see here, HTML, it attacks this HTML tag and gives us everything within that. And in our case, we want to attack this column name thing here. And the way we can kind of figure out where that's in the HTML is by clicking this button at the top and hovering over what we want to attack. Say we want to attack the rank. As you can see, the rank is in the table header, right? And it falls under T head. And there's only one T head because there's only one table. And T head stands for table head. And in the table head, we have a bunch of different pieces of information that we want to grab. So what we're going to first do is we're going to attack this table head portion. So we're going to set a variable called data, and we're going to make it equal to soup.find table head, and t head, like that. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to print data and see what that gives us. And here I'm going to go ahead and call our function get call name, run it, and if you take a look here after it runs, we've actually targeted all the values in thead. And it's not as nicely formatted as it is here, but within thead there is a a table head, area, label, rank, area, label, player, etc., etc., etc. And we've actually successfully grabbed the portion of the table that we want. But we don't just want this whole chunky mess. We want, within the table head, we want to find all the table rows. So why don't we go ahead and do that? So let me just close this window. Instead of finding all the table heads, why don't we go ahead and find the table rows within the table heads, and then go ahead and run again and see what that gives us. And as you can see, we've further filtered down. Before we had a TH at the top here, a T head at the top here, but now we just have TR, and now we've filtered out all the pieces of information within TR, which is great. But now, instead of just attacking TR, we don't want, once again, we don't want this whole mess of information. We want to find all the THs, all the THs within the TRs. So we want to find all the table headers within the table rows. So let's again do something like find TH and then run, and then see what happens. If you take a look here, after it loads, we've actually successfully fetched this first table header within the table row. And as you can see, this code matches up exactly. So the one I've got highlighted and this one right here, rank, class, everything. It's the same. So now you'll notice that we've only gotten the ranking column. We haven't gotten everything. And the reason that's happening is because we only specified to Beautiful Soup that we're finding the TH. And what that did is it went ahead and found the first TH within the TRs. And we don't want to just grab the rank, we want to grab all these different THs. And the way to do that is to specify to Beautiful Soup that we want to find all the THs. And then if we print data, you'll notice that we get after it loads, a massive array filled with every single header. So why don't I go ahead and loop through all the items in data and just print them, so it's just easier for us to take a look at them. I'll make this window a bit bigger. And as you can see, the first table head is the rank, player, position, player, team, games, game started, minutes played, etc. And awesome. So we figured out how to actually go ahead and target this thing specifically. But one issue you'll notice is that this is like really long, and we don't want this whole HTML. We want the actual content within the tag. And if you go all the way here, you'll see the content within the tag is the text RK. The content within this tag is player. The content within this tag is position, age, team, etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and not just print the items within the data, we're going to print the content within the items tag. And in this case, if you want to print content within a tag, you do something like get underscore text. So save and run. And as you'll see here, we have filtered down our whole thing. So now we have the rank, the player, position, age, all the way down to the last section, which is the points. I can show you that right here. Yeah, it's kind of hard to scroll horizontally, but you get the idea. So we figured out how to grab all these pieces of information, and instead of just printing them out, let's put them in an array, and let's just return the array. So let's call this array column names, make it an empty array, and then what we're going to do is, instead of printing items.getText, we're going to append it to our array. So we're going to do call names dot append items.getText. So now, since we're not printing anything, we have to actually go ahead and return the column names value. And let's just see what happens when we print column names in our main function, or get column names, whatever it returns in our main. So if you take a look here, it'll actually go to this website, download the content, do what we told it to, and it's put all these different things in an array for us. And now we have accomplished our first task, which is to grab all the column names. So instead of printing get column names, I'm going to have a variable just called column names, or call names, call name. And what it is the return value of that function. So now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to find all the values within the table. So let's go ahead and just make this a little bit bigger. Let's go into our mode where we can hover over the tags we want to target, or the areas we want to target. And if we just take a look here, you'll see, let me just minimize this T head thing right there. You'll see that the next thing that everything else falls into is the T body. So in the table body is where all our content lies. And each table body is comprised of a table row. And each table row has all the pieces of data that we want. So let's go ahead and attack the table body, every table row within the table body, and all the items within that. So in order to do that, let's first create a function called def get table data. And we'll start off simple by just attacking that first row, row number 1, with precious Aishawa. And what we're going to do is we're going to first do data is equal to, what does it say here? As you can see, we want to fetch all the data, but you'll notice that some of these table rows have a class called full table, whereas the other ones have something called italic text partial table, which means that, for example, this table is partially filled out. And if we look here, you can see that it is partially filled out here, right there. So there is a couple of tables which are not fully filled out. So what we want to do is we only want the table rows with the full table tag. So how we do that is we, once again, use the soup object that we created, and we want to find all. And what do we want to find all of? Well, we want to find all the table rows with the class, and you do class underscore, and in our case, the class is equal to full underscore table. And let's just go see what happens if we cycle through every value in data and print it. Save and run. Wait for it to load. Oh, I forgot to call the get table data function down below here. So get table data, run it. See, it's giving us a lot of information, and within each one is the different pieces of data within it. So here it's fetching the table row, and it's fetching this table row because it does have a full table class, and it's printing everything within this here. So it's printing whatever is in table data. And so here we've attacked the proper table row. So in our case here, first one here is that. And within that first table row, we have a couple of table datas and table headers. So here you can see that Aishawa Precious, you can't see that, let me expand that a little bit more. make that bigger, is one of the first things that we actually do attack, right? And in this one here, you can see the other one is Pt.1, which is the age, team ID, which is Miami, so MIA, which I'm not sure what that actually is. 53, all these different statistics that we want to attack. So instead of just attacking the full table class, we want to find each individual item within it. So first of all, in here, I'm calling find all. So let's just start off simple and just do find and see once again what that gives us. And this won't print out as much information, but what it's doing is it's printing out the values within the table, the table row with the class of full table. And that's only the first one that it's printing out right now. And as you can see, it has all these different stats. So what we want to do is, instead of just printing I, see what happens if we do something like print I.get underscore text and give it a run. Let's just take a look at see what happens here. As you can see, it has a couple of empty spots. Or sorry, this is just the enter space, but you can see that it actually is fetching all of these different pieces of data that we want. So if I were to go here, actually print I beforehand, and then print I.get text right afterwards, we'll get an idea of what's going on. So as you can see here, the content within that is just 1 for this first tag. The content within that here is just 0. Within that content right here is empty. It doesn't have any value. So on, so on, so on. So what we can do is we can create kind of an array called stat. Make it empty. And instead of printing I and printing I.get text, why don't we add this piece of information to our stat thing and print stat. Oh. If you print stat, we'll have all those different statistics in an array, as you can see right here. And what we have to do is we have to recreate this process for every single variable, or sorry, every single thing with a class of full table. So instead of just finding the first one, we have to do find all, and then what we got to do is for the player, for every player in data, we want to create a stat array, and for every statistic in the player, so because now we're dealing with that, we're gonna append stat.get text. So let's just see what happens when we do that here. Oh, I messed up by mistake. 1 second. Stat.append, sorry, it shouldn't be stat, it should be, I can't be using the same variable here. So for every value in player, because what happened is Python got confused because I had an array called stat and then I had a list value called stat, so it got confused there. So instead, let's do something like for every value in the player, append value.get text and then print the stat. Let's see what happens now. And as you can see, we've actually scraped all these different pieces of data and we've gotten the table. And let me just, instead of just printing the data, let's return this as a 2D array with every single value in it. So close that. Instead of printing it, let's have a variable here at the top called table data, set it equal to empty. And instead of printing the statistic, we can add it to the table data append stat. And then at the end, go ahead and return the table data. And what that's going to do here at the bottom, if we say table data is equal to this, and we go ahead and print something like table data, you'll see that it'll print everything. This will be a really big mess, but it'll contain one massive array, and within the array there are subarrays with each of the statistics that are needed. So instead of just printing table data, we can actually cycle through. So for the player in table data, let's go ahead and print the player. And now we can take a look at what happens. So if we're to expand this, it's a little bit wider, you'll be able to see that now we have a variable which stores all of our players and their corresponding statistic. So as you can see, we've managed to successfully grab all the needed data for our required rankings. So in the second part in this video, which will be coming up soon, I will be showing you guys how to take all these different pieces of data and actually begin ranking our players. So that's it for this video. Hopefully I didn't confuse you guys and you understood all of what I did. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.